Hey, friends, it's story time. Gather around. Let me paint you a picture. A mother in South Memphis stands on her porch and watches her child cough through another night of turbine exhaust. Yes, a grandfather in Houston's Fifth Ward takes a breath and wonders if the cancer that killed his neighbor will come for him next. And in DC, lawmakers smile in front of cameras, celebrating a bill that fast tracks more of this exact same. This is not theoretical. It's not a glitch in the system. It's the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. And Americans, mostly communities of color, are unsurprisingly paying the price. This is Overruled. Let's start the show. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Overruled, where the law meets the culture, the courtroom meets the people, and the truth drags everyone into the light. I'm your agent of chaos and accountability, Jay, and I welcome you to become part of the courtroom of legal eagles, here to figure out what the is going on and what our decision makers and elected officials are not doing about it. This week, we're putting the government and the corporations it coddles on full blast. From the one big, beautiful bill that promises progress but delivers pollution, to communities still fighting the same toxic battles from 40 years ago, to legal loopholes so slick they might as well be written in oil. Or oil, as some of us say from the South. Episode 15, whew, child. It's all about accountability in an age where power answers to no one. We're diving into the cases, the cover-ups, and the cold hard facts about environmental injustice and how the law is being bent to serve the few at the expense of the many. You ready? I'm ready. You ready? We ready. We ready. Let's get into it. All right, y'all. Welcome to Issues on the Docket, where we unpack the political posturing, policy decisions, and flat out foolishness affecting our daily lives. And this week, we're going green. Not the kind that saves the planet or some of our favorite kind of plant, but the kind that lines pockets. We're talking about environmental injustice, government neglect, and corporations treating Black and Brown communities like disposable test zones. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the one alleged big, beautiful bill. What they're not telling you. So, as you may know, Congress just passed a sweeping legislative package dubbed, and I quote, the one big, beautiful bill. It spans nearly 1,200 pages, bundles more than 18 proposals into one, and claims to be a bipartisan win for infrastructure, energy, and economic growth. But here's the fine print they don't want you to read. The bill rewrites key portions of the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, a law that has protected communities from environmental harm since 1970. It raises the threshold for what qualifies as a major federal action, meaning fewer environmental impact statements are now required. Now, according to the Environmental Defense Fund, 99% of EIS delays are caused by agencies and applicants, not environmental groups. Yet, this bill blames so-called red tape for holding up energy projects. Doesn't make sense. It shortens the window to file lawsuits from 6 years to 2, limiting many communities' ability to challenge toxic projects in court. And what's getting greenlit under this streamlining approach? Over 17,000 miles of new pipelines fast-tracked, increased fossil fuel leasing on public lands, And fossil fuel giants like Exxon, Chevron, and Koch Industries, all of whom lobbied for this bill, now have even more legal immunity. The communities impacted, you may want to know? Mostly Black, brown, and poor. According to the EPA's own 2022 report, people of color are 1.5 times more likely to live near a polluting facility and 3 times more likely to suffer from exposure to particulate matter. This is not a climate bill. It's a corporate manifesto. It's not beautiful at all when it rolls back decades of environmental justice progress and treats sacrifice zones like acceptable collateral damage. Those sacrifice zones are those communities where you, your family, your friends, all of those individuals live in urban environments. We don't need another deal made in DC that leaves frontline communities choking, quite literally, on the fallout. And speaking of communities being choked out, let's pivot to South Memphis, where Elon Musk's AI company just got slapped with a federal lawsuit for doing the absolute most with the absolute least. The least amount of accountability, that is. So our next story covers the NAACP versus XAI. Now, South Memphis, a historically Black and economically disadvantaged community, is once again under environmental siege. The NAACP, along with the Southern Environmental Law Center, just filed a Clean Air Act lawsuit against XAI, Elon Musk's artificial intelligence venture. Why? Well, because XAI has been operating 2 gas-fired turbines without proper permits in a residential neighborhood near schools and homes. Now, these turbines, they emit nitrogen oxides, which are linked to asthma and respiratory illness. Also, carbon monoxide, which displaces oxygen in the bloodstream, as well as formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen. This is all pumping in the air next to the kids at school, playing, enjoying their lives, and regular residents living their everyday lives.
Excuse me?
Measurements taken in April and May of 2025 show that air pollutants exceeded both federal and state thresholds, putting over 3,000 residents, many of them children, at increased health risks. Let's be real. Let's keep it a buck. South Memphis already has one of the highest asthma hospitalization rates in the state. It's been designated an environmental justice community under EPA guidelines. And yet, Musk's company didn't even file a proper environmental impact review. XAI was supposed to be running on clean energy. Instead, they fired up turbines that make the air more toxic than a Twitter thread on race and politics.
Yeah, double homicide.
And here's what makes it worse, as if it couldn't already be terrible enough. The company, they didn't notify the public. There was no community input. There were no impact studies on vulnerable groups. This, my friends, this is textbook environmental racism. High-tech companies exploiting low-income Black communities for energy infrastructure they wouldn't dare place in Beverly Hills or Palo Alto. And if you think Elon's going to apologize, please. The only transparency he believes in is what's printed on his stock options. Now, let's head to Texas, because what's happening in Houston's 5th Ward is a case study in what happens when environmental contamination becomes generational trauma. For over 100 years, a Southern Pacific rail yard in Houston's 5th Ward treated its wooden railway ties with creosote, a highly toxic coal tar-based chemical. The site was then abandoned in the 1980s, but the damage, the cleanup, that didn't happen. Damage still spreading. According to a 2023 study by the Texas Department of State Health Services, the cancer rate in the area is double the expected average. Specifically, child's leukemia rates are 5 times higher than national norms. Liver, lung, and kidney cancers are disproportionately concentrated along the creosote plume zone. Despite residents sounding the alarm for decades, government action has been slow, inconsistent, and drastically underfunded. The site falls under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, but remediation plans have stalled for over 20 years. So residents today are still living with soil and groundwater contamination, toxic vapor intrusion in their own homes, incomplete health tracking by state agencies. Is this not a problem? Do we not care? That's what Texas is clearly saying to the residents within the Fifth Ward. A federal class action suit is now underway, spearheaded by local activists and environmental attorneys demanding both full remediation and community relocation options. Do we all think that that's really going to happen, though? Unfortunately, we'll have to see. What's happening in Fifth Ward, it isn't a mystery, it's not a conundrum, it's nothing that we really have to critically wonder why it's happening. We know why it's happening. What's happening in the Fifth Ward is a map of environmental apartheid. The data itself is abundantly clear. The community is organized. The science is solid, fact-based. What's missing? Political will, government resources, and the courage to admit that slow violence is still violence, just without the headlines. So there you have it. 3 stories, 3 very different locations, but one unshakable truth. Environmental harm isn't accidental. It's policy, it's profit, and it is, most importantly, preventable. When Congress passes streamlined bills that silence communities, when billionaires build toxic projects in Black neighborhoods, when cancer clusters get ignored for decades, it's not a system that's broken. It's a system that's working exactly as designed. So here's what we're not gonna do. Stay quiet. Demand environmental justice funding. Call out our state and federal agencies. Vote like your lungs literally depend on it. Because in frontline communities that I've mentioned here, they do. This has been Issues on the Docket. Now, after the break, let's talk about a case that literally changed everything. Stay tuned. All right, y'all, welcome to the case that changed everything, where we dig into the legal battles that didn't just make headlines, they made history. This week, we're heading back in time to 1979, Houston, Texas. Because before those hashtags existed, before climate summits, before the EPA even whispered the words environmental justice, there was one Black woman, one community, and one bold legal move that dared to say, our lives matter, our air matters, and you will not treat us like a dumping ground. Northwood Manor was a quiet, working-class Black neighborhood in Northeast Houston. Folks lived there for peace, stability, and the same dream shared across the country: safety, opportunity, and a healthy place to raise their families. But what they got instead was a corporate and political slap in the face. In the late 70s, Southwestern Waste Management Corps, with the support of the city and county officials, proposed placing a massive solid waste facility right in the middle of this residential neighborhood. Let's pause here for a sec. At the time, Houston had 14 solid waste sites. 100% of them, again, 100% of them were in Black or Latino communities, despite those groups making up only about 35% of the city's population. The proposed site in Northwood Manor would process more than 1,500 tons of garbage per day within a half mile of schools, churches, and homes. Residents didn't need an environmental degree to know what that would mean. 1, the smell. 2, the air quality. 3, the increase in rodents and pests, as well as a higher disease risk. And most of all, the blatant disrespect. Now enter Margie Richard and her legal fight. One resident, Margie Richard, a school teacher and activist, said, "Enough is enough." Along with other community leaders, she helped mobilize resistance through local organizing, petitions, and eventually legal action. They partnered with Charles Lee, an academic and activist who would later become a key figure in the environmental justice movement, and filed a lawsuit in federal court, Bean versus Southwestern Waste Management Corporation. The lead plaintiff, Helen Bean, represented a coalition of Northwood Manor residents. Their legal strategy? Use Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination in programs receiving federal funds. The claim was simple, but it was also revolutionary. Placing this facility in our neighborhood violates our civil rights because it perpetuates a discriminatory pattern of citing hazardous waste facilities in communities of color. This wasn't just about zoning. It was about justice and equity. It was about a system that kept, quite literally, dumping harm where people had the least power to fight back. And someone finally putting that system on trial. The plaintiffs in this case argued that even if the government or the waste company didn't intend to discriminate, the effect was racially discriminatory. This approach, called disparate impact theory, was cutting edge at the time, especially in environmental cases. They pointed to data showing a pattern of Houston's waste facilities disproportionately affecting Black and Latino neighborhoods, and argued that this wasn't coincidental. It was systemic. And remember, this is 1979, y'all. The EPA had only existed for 9 years. The concept of environmental justice did not exist in the federal lexicon. There were no agencies tracking environmental racism, no established case law linking pollution to civil rights. This was ahead of its time. This lawsuit was building the plane while flying it through a chaotic storm. Ultimately, the court dismissed this case in 1985, ruling that the plaintiffs hadn't met the burden of proof necessary to establish a civil rights violation under existing law. Not the response I know many of you were hoping to receive from me telling you this case and this story. Technically, they lost. But here's the real truth. That courtroom loss became a political spark. The lawsuit drew national attention. Activists from Louisiana to North Carolina began studying the legal filings and community strategy. It sparked academic research, policy papers, and coalition building between environmentalists and civil rights organizers alike. By 1990, the term environmental racism had entered public discourse, thanks to leaders like Charles Lee and Benjamin Chavis. In 1992, the EPA created the Office of Environmental Equity, later renamed the Office of Environmental Justice. And in 1994, President Clinton signed Executive Order 12898, directing all federal agencies to consider environmental justice in decision-making, a direct outcome of pressure that began with lawsuits like Bean versus Southwestern. So let's be very crystal clear. Bean versus Southwestern Waste Management Corp., it changed everything because it reframed the fight. It said, environmental harm is not just a science issue. It's a civil rights issue. Communities of color are not dumping grounds. They're entitled to the same protections as anyone else. The right to breathe clean air and live without fear of toxic exposure is a basic human right. Fast forward to today, and this case still echoes. Groups like Earth Justice, NRDC, and We Act for Environmental Justice now litigate environmental discrimination using civil rights laws. Studies like the 2018 EPA report confirmed that people of color are more likely to live near hazardous facilities, even when controlling for income. Now, recent cases like the XAI suit in South Memphis or the creosote fight in Houston's Fifth Ward are legal descendants of Bean's blueprint. This case wasn't perfect. It didn't win outright. It didn't win in court. But it gave the movement a name, a language, a legal pathway. It empowered communities to stop accepting, well, that's just the way it is. Bean taught us that we don't need to wait for legislators to care. We can drag these issues into court ourselves, meaning we can bring it to their front door. Even if the judge doesn't rule in your favor, my favor, the court of public opinion starts paying attention. And that can be even more powerful, as evidenced in this case. Because once you name the injustice, you really bring it into the light, you can fight it. And once you fight it, you can change it. So let's bring this back to 2025. We've got billion-dollar companies operating illegal turbines in Black neighborhoods. Congress is fast-tracking fossil fuel development while slashing community input. And places like Houston's Fifth Ward are still battling the legacy of creosote pollution 40 years later. The questions raised in Bean versus Southwestern are still unresolved. Who gets to decide where polluting industries go? Think about it. How is it determined? Who is that decision authority? Why are those industries overwhelmingly placed in communities of color? And what legal tools do these communities have to fight back? That, my friends, is why this case matters and why it changed everything. That's why we tell these stories. Because sometimes the most important legal battles aren't the ones we win, although we may want to win. Of course, nothing wrong with that. But even in loss, these are the cases that teach us how to fight. And that's a lesson that we can absolutely carry in 2025. So, the next time someone tells you environmental justice is a new issue, tell them about Bean versus Southwestern, about a community that dared to link pollution to civil rights, about a group of Black families in Houston who said, no, not here, not again, not on my watch. They didn't win on paper, but they changed and actually wrote the playbook. And every environmental lawsuit filed in their name since, that's the legacy that the Fifth Ward built. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hey, besties.
Hey, bestie.
Welcome back to Exhibit Asterisk, the segment where we cross-examine the fine print and expose how legal loopholes leave everyday folks with all the risk and none of the receipts. This week's docket, 3 environmental law features so slick, so subtle, and so devastating. They'd make a corporate lobbyist weep with joy. Buckle up. We about to get into it. Let's start with the illusion of inclusion. You don't need me to tell you that that is running rampant in America, but across the US, dozens of states have passed community notification laws for new industrial projects, toxic waste sites, refineries, asphalt plants, the whole toxic toolkit. These laws, they sound good on paper. They're supposed to keep residents informed and empowered. But here's the asterisk. Notification does not mean participation. It doesn't even mean understanding. And it damn sure doesn't mean consent. In many states, simply mailing a notice to nearby property owners or tacking a single paper sign to a telephone pole counts as sufficient notice. No public hearing, no one's down at City Hall expressing their opinions, nothing. No translation of the requirements, just the flyer. Take Louisiana, for example, home to the infamous Cancer Alley, which I referred to back in episode 11. An 85-mile stretch along the Mississippi River packed with over 150 petrochemical plants, mostly situated in Black communities. State law requires only reasonable notice of permit applications, but not consent or formal consultation. And guess what? Companies, they can start construction while the clock runs on any objections that may somehow get presented. Or let's take a look at Texas. We've been all up and down Texas on this episode, where zoning commissions only require a one-time newspaper ad in English in communities that are 90% Spanish speaking to count as proper notification. I want you to tell me what's wrong with that. I'll wait. Precisely. Let's be clear. This is not outreach. It's not transparency. It is paper-thin legal cover. And I mean, it is the most translucent paper. This is what they mean when they say, check the box. These laws exist to appear participatory without actually letting folks participate. Because if residents really knew what was being built next door, you know damn well they'd organize, they'd protest, they would sue, and the system knows it. More to come. Next up, a loophole big enough to drive a tractor through. Literally. Under the Clean Water Act, there are strict rules for discharges of pollutants into the rivers, lakes, and drinking water sources around the United States. But industrial farming, aka Big Ag, not Big Ange, Big Ag, has carved out a golden exemption known as agricultural runoff. Here we go. Translation: if your factory pumps sludge into a stream, you need a permit. If your hog farm sprays liquefied manure across acres of land and it runs off into that same stream, no permit is necessary. I don't know about you, but my right eye just started twitching as I started to think even more deeply about what that means. According to the EPA, agriculture is the leading source of water pollution in the United States, responsible for 70% of pollution in rivers and lakes, 50% of groundwater contamination, and over 1,000 known drinking water violations related to nitrates, E. coli, and phosphorus.
Excuse me?
All at the hands of the United States and Big Ag. And the impact, y'all already know, it's not evenly distributed. Let's talk about Iowa's Latinx meatpacking communities who face chronic contamination of private wells from adjacent corn farms using nitrogen-heavy fertilizers and confined animal feeding operations. Or Eastern North Carolina, where more than 2,300 hog lagoons, that is a new one. Hog lagoons, which are giant open cesspools of pig waste, yuck, sit in low-income Black and Indigenous neighborhoods. After Hurricane Florence, dozens of these lagoons flooded into residential zones. Do you think they did anything about it? Nah, they didn't. And still, even in all of that, y'all, there was no permit required. No federal enforcement whatsoever. Because agricultural runoff isn't regulated like other industrial waste. It's natural, they say. Unavoidable. Traditional. I got one for you. When people say, go back to the land, they're not talking about these fields. This isn't your grandma's tomato patch. This isn't her herb garden. This is factory scale contamination wrapped in Americana and protected by law. And it's leaving, say it with me, Black, brown, and indigenous rural families with poisoned water and no accountability in sight. And now, let's talk about distance, or rather, the illusion of it. Local zoning laws often require buffers, minimum distances between industrial sites and residential areas. But what these laws don't say is how those buffers are calculated, what counts as a barrier, or how toxic drift actually works. Hey, here we are in my own backyard. In Los Angeles County, some cities allow toxic industrial operations to be placed just 200 feet from homes. That's less than a city block. In Chicago, metal shredding facilities have been moved from majority white neighborhoods to Black and brown neighborhoods on the south and west sides, with zoning buffers as thin as 100 feet, justified by citing highways, fences, or even railroad tracks as separation. But wait, those are also other pollutants. But you know what? See, that's common sense. And this is devoid of common sense. But I digress. Here's the scientific reality. Airborne toxins don't stop at fences. Creosote, benzene, And particulate matter can travel up to 3 miles depending on wind conditions. A 2021 Harvard study found that communities living within 1,500 feet of industrial zones had a significantly higher rate of premature death due to air pollution exposure, particularly Black adults over 50. And here we are talking about 2 different cities where we have 100 feet and 200 feet distance. Imagine how much significant their impacts are to the health. Jeez. And yet, y'all, cities continue to greenlight projects that meet the legal buffer, even when the science says the danger goes way beyond this invisible line. This is spatial gaslighting. If you can see the smokestack from your porch, feel the tremors from the trucks barreling down the street, and taste the metal in your mouth on a humid day, the buffer is farcical. It is a legal fantasy. But in zoning law, the fence, the overpass, the railroad tracks, it makes it all okay. So, let's recap. What did we learn here today, class? You get notified, but not included. You get polluted, but not protected. You get distanced, but not defended. Exhibit asterisk this week proves what many of us already know. Laws weren't just written to allow environmental injustice. They were engineered to make it look legal. And when legal systems pretend a sign on a telephone pole is consent, when pig waste gets a pass while people are getting sick, when zoning draws a line on a map and calls it justice, you better believe that asterisk means something. It means we have work to do. So, are you in? Are you going to look into these in your own areas? I highly implore you to, because you just don't know how all of these things really do come together and impact your health, your family's health, and the health of every single person you care about. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Gather round, folks, gather round. Welcome back. It's time to get right into it. This is Objection, Your Honor. And you know what, Your Honor, court of public opinion, today's objection isn't polite. And I have to say, I kind of feel like I say that all the time, but I just need y'all to understand that I'm not here to be nice about the things that I call out in the law, okay? This needs to be addressed. And so you can't always be polite about it, okay? So I am saying that just so that people understand that, in this particular circumstance, I'm letting go of the guardrails of the politeness that I posture in the other segments prior to this, okay? So anyway, I continue now. Here we go. Okay, so Your Honor, this objection isn't polite. It's not respectfully submitted. It is fed up, exhausted, at wit's end, some would say. Fire breathing, many would say. Because I refuse to sit here and act like this government hasn't just co-signed the slow death of millions of its citizens under the guise of progress with this bill. I object to a system that dares to wrap genocide in the flag and call it bipartisanship. To a government that keeps telling poor, Black, brown, and indigenous communities to just hold on a little longer, while bulldozing protections at full speed, fast-tracking pipelines, and selling off survival to the highest bidder. Let's start with this one big, beautiful bill, okay? The biggest, and I mean, the biggest bait and switch legislation we've seen in years, decades. They called it transformative, said it was for the people, said it would revitalize the nation. You've had some time to sit with it. What do you think? Let me tell you what I think. What this bill really did was strip environmental protections from communities already drowning in smog and sludge and without clean drinking water. It muzzled public participation. It handed fossil fuel giants a get-out-of-jail-free card with a bow on top. This bill is the legislative version of a predator in church clothes. Because you don't get to gut the National Environmental Policy Act and then pose for photo ops like you saved the damn planet. You know who this bill actually delivers for? Oh, I'll tell you. Chevron, Koch Industries, ExxonMobil, the rich, the elite, the 1%. Meanwhile, Fifth Ward residents are still breathing creosote. South Memphis kids are still inhaling turbine fumes. And the EPA's out here filing dissents because even their own employees know the agency is complicit. Dr. King, I can tell you now, didn't dream of this. Fannie Lou Hamer, she didn't fight for this. And we're not dying quietly for this. The government ain't governing. It's abandoning. And while we're at it, let's be real about the state of things. The Trump administration never really left during the Biden years. They just traded red hats for black robes. Come on now, keep up. They're still in power through the courts, through the regulatory gutting, through the silence of so-called moderates who claim they're balancing the nation while the scales tip into open graves. Where are the checks and balances? Where's the congressional oversight? Where's the agency accountability? I'll wait. Nowhere. Because they're too busy fundraising and tweeting while children are being poisoned by legal loopholes that they created. And don't you dare tell me this is complicated. It's abundantly clear. Because what's complicated about not killing people for profit? The history is loud. The pattern is clear. We have been here before, folks. In 1963, Malcolm X warned us. This government has failed us. This government has failed the black man. He didn't whisper that. He didn't sanitize it for press. He said it straight, and guess what? It's still true today. In 1982, Benjamin Chavis called out environmental racism in North Carolina. And 40 years later, the EPA is still studying the problem, while black children are still being buried from asthma and cancer at triple the national rates. In 2020, the world screamed, "I can't breathe." You remember it. You were there. Hopefully you participated in that resistance. And in 2025, that's still literal for communities surrounded by legal pollutants and political indifference. And now we get bills that gaslight us into thinking streamlining is safety. that growth means gutting safeguards, that beautiful includes cancer clusters, water advisories, and contaminated air. You know what? You can miss me with all of that. The real objection here, and I hope each and every one of you feels this at your core, in your being, is that we are not disposable. So yeah, I object. I object to a government that governs only for Wall Street and gaslights everyone else. I object to lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, who use black and brown pain as political currency, but never cash it in for justice. Yeah. I object to a system where billionaires poison neighborhoods and the legal system hands them liability waivers. I object to bipartisan deals made in rooms without a single working class voice at that damn table, and then expect those same people to clap for their own major legislation. I object to the idea that poor people should be grateful for crumbs while the powerful feast and call that democracy. This right here that we're experiencing, this is not governance. It's negligence. It's betrayal. It's a machine running on oil money and powered by apathy. And oof. And we are the fuel it burns through. James Baldwin said, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. I could not agree more. I'm awake. Are you? I'm also raging. Are you? Not because I hate this country. In fact, I love this country. But because I refuse to accept the way it's structured to quietly destroy people like me and call it policy. I can't be silent or silenced. So no, I won't be calm. I won't be patient. We've been patient. Look at where that's gotten us, folks. Wake up. I won't be grateful for slow death that is caused by legislative malpractice. We've got to do something. Will you? This has been Objection, Your Honor. And if y'all won't object with me, I'll do it by my damn self. Loud enough for the courtroom, the community, and the cowards in Congress to hear me. Because silence has never saved us. And as soon as you realize that, as we realize that, the sooner we can actually elicit change. Let me say this. You know, if there's one thing this country has taught me, it's that our people have never waited for permission to survive. We've never waited for the law to catch up with our humanity. And we damn sure haven't waited for justice to be handed down like a favor. We make justice, right? We demand breathability. We demand accountability. We organize for the clean air, the clean water, and the communities they keep trying to render unlivable. Because as Fannie Lou Hamer once told us, nobody's free until everybody's free. Simple concept, yet it's so difficult in this country's execution. And baby, that includes environmental freedom too. So don't just listen to this episode, live this episode. Speak up, act out, act up, vote with your lungs, protest with your voice, get loud. Now, if you've got a legal oddity, a rant of your own to object to, or a weird law you want me to roast, send it over to the Overruled Podcast at gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us at Overruled Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And on YouTube, you can follow our channel at the Overruled Podcast. Rate, review, and share this show with 5 of your best friends that will benefit from this show. Because this community, we speak, we object, we overrule, right? So share. Until next time, y'all, stay loud and overrule your doubts with the facts and the truth. Bye. Yeah. Ooh. Toot that thing up. Chop. All right. Oh man. Man. I ain't even got a song for y'all because this episode incensed me um in several ways. Whether you're watching or if you were just listening, you could probably hear it in my inflection in certain points. It's just a feeling of frustration. You know what I'm saying? It is. Oh, before I continue down my, you know, rabbit hole of me just ranting. Um, hey, welcome. It's JB Zafties. You already know what it is. Today, I'm sipping on a sparkling lemonade from Trader Joe's. This is actually really good because it's not too sweet. It's like perfectly tart. Got that carbonation there, and it gives you just that that real feeling of a nice lemonade. So yeah. Shout out to the great people at Trader Joe's because I love them. So back to what I was saying. Like, I just feel like we could be doing so much better in this country. And right now, it seems like we are in this place of just rolling over and taking it, you know? Like looking at what's been happening in the news with this bill and also with other breaking news that has come through regarding funding for public broadcasting being rescinded, and also the Department of Education getting greenlit to be dismantled. There are so many indicators here that reflect that this government, this administration, is hell bent on reducing access to opportunity in a way that has never been seen before. And that's concerning. It's frustrating. It really does piss me off. I I'm doing my part. Yeah, I am. With this show, also with sharing information with all the people in my circles, making sure people are paying attention to the news, and also by being a law student. I'm doing my part. And what I desperately wish and hope for so many people, whether they're listening to this or not, is that they develop the strength to do something themselves. Because this government wants us to be disillusioned, oppressed, and confused. Duh. But we can be all those things for a moment. At some point, we got to turn that shit around and we use that as fuel. We use that as our motivation to make change. You get what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at on it all. I this episode really just reminded me of that, plus everything else that's just been going on. I want us to do better collectively. Like, I just want us to shift out of this love and hip hop mentality. Okay? Escapism can only go so far. Are you listening to what's happening on the news? Are you following things that literally directly impact you, your families, your children? If the answer to that is no, then you got to shape up, boo. You got to do better. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying it clearly. I'm not saying this from like a preachy standpoint. I'm saying it from somebody who's out here living in the world, black, gay, like opinionated, in the military, like all of these things. Okay. So I have a varied perspective, but I'm not letting that stuff stop me. So I just don't want that to stop you or anyone else in your circle. So literally, my point in all of this in the afties today is to leave you with a question at hand. What are you doing? What are you doing right now to combat and resist this administration? To be a part of the solution and not the problem. That's all I'm asking. I want you to sit with that and you answer that for yourself. If you don't have any answers, that's your indicator that you need to start critically thinking. You feel me? So, yeah, that's all I got there. I'm done. I'm done with that. Whew. I just had to let that go. I had to let it go in this afties. um, Outside of that, I'm doing well. I'm busy, work is good, life is good. Throws of summer, enjoying, all the things that are happening. Um, and I am just really trying to live in the now. I've been going on a couple of dates. They haven't gone anywhere. They just weren't for me. Which is fine. That's what dating's for. But yeah, it's been kind of like, eh. But it's also interesting because being out here in Los Angeles, it's dating out here is so different than like being in the South, being in the Midwest, or something like that. It's a different type of queer person, different type of gay out here. And it makes sense why Los Angeles is number two on the list. It's either number one or number two. And you can Google this on the list of the most difficult cities to date in. I believe it's either first or second, and in whichever position, New York is right after it. So, or before it. So, you know, I'm just out here doing my thing, being cute, drinking my water, drinking my sparkling lemonade. That's it. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you get good news. I hope a lot of positive comes your way because that's what we all about over here. We're gonna hold people accountable, yes, but we also gonna lift people up. That's all I'm about over here, okay? And if you have any ideas for case suggestions, topics within the law that you want me to kind of dig through to see if there's some, not see if, but highlight some case that y'all have never heard of before in a specific area of the law, let me know and I can add that to the list. I'm always looking for good ideas on subject matter that I can bring to y'all. And yeah, that's it. All right, I'm gonna go because I have to do a little bit more work, get a workout in. And today is a double header for me. So I have to record another episode. And no, I won't be in the same clothes. So you won't even know. You won't even know which one is the double in this, actually. So not like y'all care, but I'm just tickled and I'm also a little delirious because I'm a little tired. Okay. Love y'all. Not in a weird way. Okay. And love me back. Love me back. Not in a weird way. Okay? All right, girls and boys, kings, queens, and royalty. Bye.